All right. Welcome to the pre-show, everyone. This is the pre-show for our 220-1002 Core 2 A+ study group for today. You're here in the pre-show. We have 10 minutes before we get started. So if you're watching this on the replay, you can fast forward 10 minutes and you'll be exactly where you are. If you're here live, well, you're stuck with me. There's nothing you can do but deal with the realities of space-time. We are going to do all 1,002 questions for this first hour, and then the second hour, I open up the phone lines, and you can call in or put things into the chat room. I'll put questions in the chat room, or you can put questions in the chat room. Now, I will see them. I will answer them. That's how that works. Let's do a quick check. Rolando in the chat room just passed your 1,001. Congratulations on that. Paul's here from D.C. Folks from Nepal are here. Welcome. We've got so much here to work with. I need to get my stream health information up. Asheville here again. Welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We've got to get the recordings. Let's check recordings and make sure those are good. Cameras are good. Recordings are good. Let's double check recordings, actually. They are both going locally. Recording is going locally here and down here. You can see the Cylons are going down there. And then we've got questions about the one online. I think the one online will be fine. I think the YouTube version will be okay. So we're good there. Hello, chat room. Nigeria is here. What kind of questions can you ask? In the second hour, you can ask any question you would like. I don't know if I will answer any question, but you can ask any question. So that's how that goes. Generally, you folks are pretty good about questions. Rolando, not only did you pass your 1001, your wife passed her Security Plus as well. Congratulations on that, too. Both of those difficult exams to get through. You guys must have been driving each other crazy during the study process. So now you still have to do the 1002, and she's done. There's Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, checking in. Berlin is here. Welcome. Thanks for being here. Trying to get everything ready to go this morning. A little bit behind. Actually, not behind. Everything is here. Everything is working. I think we have everything there. Hello, Venezuela. You have our 1001 A+ tomorrow. Good luck with that. Shouldn't you be studying for that instead of watching this? Really? No, I think that's okay. I think you're fine doing that. It can't hurt, right? It's just a couple hours. See how that goes. We've got all A+ 221,002 questions today. So if you were here Tuesday, we had the 1001 study group. So 2 days later here, there you go. San Antonio, welcome. So Rolando, she's in the U.S., you're in the U.K., you're both taking your exams. I guess you can't really bother each other that much then. If you're in different countries separated by an ocean, that helps. That's one of the great things about this type of job, isn't it? You can go anywhere, do anything. Let's get Skype up and running. That'd be a good one to have ready for the second hour. There we go. See, at least I remembered that. Elizabethtown, Kentucky, welcome. Very, very good. Is it okay to prepare for Security Plus without a good knowledge of Network Plus? Well, it's okay to do that. As I've often said, you really do need a very good foundation in networking to be successful with IT security, because just a huge part of IT security is related to networking. Now, the Security Plus exam does not require you to have that. So that's one of those that is important to know, is that Security Plus doesn't rely on as much of your network knowledge as Network Plus does. So. Does the Socrative app update? Because it says Study Group Rewind. Well, this is the Study Group Rewind question. The first question that is up on the screen is always, the first one we do is a Study Group Rewind question, which is last month's question. So it's supposed to say that. And then when we start the study group, we'll go into other things as well. Well, there's our 5-minute mark. We've gotten the notification. So you don't have to do anything. If you're in Socrative, you're looking at it, you're just fine. So, would you recommend for studying one part of the test at a time or both and take together? I would not take both of those together. I don't understand you crazy people that do that. I would concentrate on studying for the 1001 or concentrate on studying for the 1002 and passing that exam. And then once that's done, study for the other one. Because you can take them in any order you would like. Certainly taking them the same day, unless you're somebody who's been in the industry, you already know the content. It's really just a review process for you. You have to go in and take this exam. I could see you going in and taking both on the same day. But for the vast majority of us, we really want to study one thing at a time. Both exams are pretty big. So it's pretty important that you're focusing on just what you need to know. And there's not a lot of overlap between those two exams. So you don't have to worry about studying up for both of them so that you can pass them all at the same time. It's not required. It's certainly not recommended. Hello, Las Vegas. NV, welcome. Nevada. LA is here. That would be Los Angeles and not Lloyd Acres. Welcome. And you just passed your 1001. Congratulations. That's good too. That comes in handy whenever you deal with that. So we'll take care of those things. So I don't think the difficulty level changed between the 901 and the 1001. I think the difficulty level is about the same. And you will find that with these is that there doesn't seem to be a difference in difficulty level. There was about 20% of the content is new. So about 80% of the content is the same as what happened before on the same as the other 901 exam, 901 and 902. So the content didn't change dramatically. Between the 800 and the 1000s, I don't think the difficulty level changed. I don't think the difficulty level has ever changed between the 600 series and the 1000 series, which is when I stepped into doing these, is the 600 series. So that's one of those that was issued. Did I ever find the cause of the technical issue? There was nothing in my event log. I have a sneaking suspicion it is a problem with my video driver. Because what I think I did is I went to get the book. I hit my mouse. It went up to the corner that automatically causes my screen to blank, which is what I wanted to do, but it couldn't come out of the blank. There was nothing in the log, so I have a sneaking suspicion it was a video card glitch. And you got to realize when I've got this running, I've got not just the two monitors here for the iMac Pro running, but I've got really a third monitor behind the scenes that is also mirroring what's in front of me. So I have a Thunderbolt connected video converter that converts from this HD view into an SDI connection that goes into my video switcher. And that's how you're able to see this. So really it's three monitors in front of me, not just two. So I'm really driving the video card more than most people would. And I think that's just, it hit a problem. And it might have also been with an app that I was running locally. I did go back and clean up some things on my operating system and got rid of some old drivers and did that kind of thing. So we'll have to see. I've never had that happen before, and I don't think... maybe it will be fine. We don't have that happen again. Let's change this. I'm going to load up my funny little circle view here on the screen. I forgot to do that. There we go. Let's do it also on the other computer. I knew there was something I was forgetting. That's what it was. So that you can see my highlighted mouse view. Hopefully it's not a problem. There we go. I think average time frame to take this exam is probably about 3 months an exam. Some people say 2 months on average. I would say it's pretty close. Between 2 and 3 months is the average to take this exam. So that's what you would expect to see as well. Let's get Keynote up and running and it ready to go. There we are. Well, look at that. I think we might be ready for this thing, which is good because we're coming up in the top of the hour. We are indeed about to get started. All of those things ready to go. And let's see how you do with your questions today. I've got all new questions for you for the 220-1002. Let's see if we can get this thing started. It's about time. It's top of the hour. Let's go, everybody. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the September 2019 220-1002 A+ study group from your friends here at Messer Studios. I'm James Messer. I will be your host for this first hour of Q&A. I guess I'm really the host for the second hour as well. But in the first hour, I will be asking you questions from the 220-1002 exam. You will be answering them online interactively. We'll see how things go. And then in the second hour, you will ask me questions. We'll turn this around. I'll open up the phone lines. We've got the chat room going. If you're watching this live on the YouTube, there's a chat there that you could follow along with. If you're on my website at professormesser.com/live, the same chat is there. So it's all one big chat room now. We're going to see how that works. Folks in the chat room are realizing this, like, wait a second, there's a chat on the YouTube side now. Yes, there is. We're going to see how this works for everybody. I think it's been working pretty well so far. We're going to see how this works for you. Looking forward to trying some things out, making sure this all works. We're able to do this study group thanks to your ongoing support. Of course, all of my study group videos, all of my training course videos, all of the videos I make are available for you to watch online for free. There's nothing you have to purchase. You don't have to register. They're not behind a paywall. They're just simply available. You can either go to my website to watch all of them from the main index, or you can go directly to YouTube and watch that as well. The YouTube view of this is available without any restrictions. I don't leave anything out, so every minute of every video is available for you to watch online. Some people like to have an offline version of it, so I sell an offline version, and that helps support a lot of what we do here. There are also audio-only versions, so if you want MP3s to listen to while you're working out on your way to work, you can do that as well. You can find out about those at professormesser.com/1000videos. Some of you would like to also help out in other ways. And one of the great things you can do is subscribe to our channel here on YouTube. Go to professormesser.com/YouTube, or if you're watching this live, there should be a subscribe button there. You can subscribe and watch what's going on. Of course, I have an A+ pop quiz question of the day on the Twitter. Don't forget about that one at professormesser.com/Twitter. Sometime in this first hour, I will give you a set of instructions and a super secret code word that you could use to earn 1 hour of a webinar category continuing education unit credit. So listen in for that at some point. Obviously, for the A+, you can only earn 4 of these in a 3-year cycle, but some of you do collect some of these CEUs, not just for CompTIA, but for other things. So sometime in this first hour, I will give you all of that information so you can check in and know exactly what you should be doing to earn that CEU. Everything we're going to do today comes from the 220-1001 and 220-1002. Today's is 220-1002. So we're not going to do anything on the 1001 today. That was Thursday's study group. For those of you that haven't checked in a while, we split these A+ study groups into 2 separate study groups. So 2 days ago, we did the 1001. Today's the 1002. This exam, though, was released in January, so it's a relatively new series of exams that is available, and you will find that they are exactly the same requirements as the 900 series exams that used to be available. So the 900 series is a 90-minute exam, or the 1000 series now also a 90-minute exam. You have the 675 as your minimum score on the 1001 on a scale of 100 to 900. Since we're studying the 1002 today, remember that your minimum score must be a 700 on that same scale between 100 and 900. Now, if you were studying for the 900 series, that 900 series was retired at the end of July. So you may be, a lot of you may be transitioning over to the 1000 series. One of the nice things about this is not a lot changed. So only 20% of the objectives on the 220-1002 are new from the 900 series. So if you are transitioning in, it's not an enormous transition. If you would like to see exactly which objectives were changed between the 900 series and the 1000 series, I've highlighted all of those for you for both of these exams. You can find that summary at professormesser.com/objectives. There's also a link there that you could use to be able to get to the CompTIA website to download the latest objectives. So all of that is on that page at professormesser.com/objectives. Today, as I mentioned, we're going to be focusing on the 220-1002. I would not say that either one of these is more difficult than the other, but they are different in the type of topics that you will get. We will talk about today topics ranging from operating systems, security, software troubleshooting, and operational procedures. So those are the 4 primary domains, CompTIA calls them, that we'll be focusing on as we go through these questions today. If you like listening to this study group in an audio version, or perhaps you have a podcast app you use to automatically download podcasts for you, you can subscribe to this as a podcast, an audio-only podcast, at professormesser.com/podcast. That's where you can subscribe to my A+, my Network Plus, and my Security Plus study groups. And if you do have that podcast app, it will download them automatically. You can also play them from that page so that you can stream them directly to your mobile device. There are also video replays of this available as well. You can find them out on professormesser.com. About a day or so later, sometimes a day or two after this, you will see that the YouTube video description will be updated with timestamps. So if you go back to any one of these and you're looking for a specific question or a specific piece of information, you can easily go back and look at all of these different timestamps. My marketing manager, Lori, has to listen to me go on and listen in to exactly what timestamp correlates to everything else and put these into the video description. She does a great job. So this is something that might help you in your studies. Hopefully, you'll be able to do that as well. Now, today, we're going to focus on Q&A. I'm going to ask you questions. You're going to answer them. That's our first hour here. It's a very simple process, and I use an online service called Socrative to do this. Go to professormesser.com/QA, and you'll pop open the Socrative question that's waiting for you. You will also find that there is a mobile app available. If you're into the mobile app thing, you can go to Google Play or your Apple App Store and download the Socrative student app. Now, if you do that, it will ask you for a room name, and the room name is listed right there. It's Professor Messer, all one word, ProfessorMesser. That's the room name. Make sure you spell it right or you'll be the only one in the room. So all the rest of us are already here in the room, and we have a question that is waiting for you. It's actually a question from last month. That's why I call it my study group rewind question, just to see if you're able to get into the questions, you're able to answer them online, and you're able to see and answer those questions. The question that is there asks, which of the following would be the best way to control ESD? And we have a number of different options. This is a multiple choice question. The first available option is A, disconnect the power cord when working inside the computer. Or is it B, use antivirus or anti-malware software? Or is it C, maintain humidity levels over 60%? I guess it could be D, use cloth gloves when working with components. Or it might be E, use a grounded electrical connection. Those are the 5 options available to you. If you would like to answer, remember our rule is to not answer in the chat room. We don't want to answer or even give hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to go to professormesser.com/QA and answer the questions right there on that page at professormesser.com/QA. And you can submit your answer and see how you do. Now, on this one, it's available. You can see the updates in real time, and we're a little torn over what this specific answer might be. For example, 40% of you say to maintain humidity levels over 60%. 30% of you say use a grounded electrical connection, and then 24% say disconnect the power cord when working inside the computer. Only 4% said to use cloth gloves, and only 1% said to use antivirus. I think we can throw those out when we're talking about controlling ESD. This is a useful question, not only so that you are quizzed on ESD, which is electrostatic discharge. Here's my hint for you as we go through this. But also remember that the questions and the way they are asked are almost as important as the answers. So this question asks, which of the following would be the best way to control ESD? So that's pretty important. Of these 5 different answers, only one of them actually even comes close to being able to control ESD. And that single option is to have a 60% humidity. None of the other options do anything with preventing ESD. In fact, one of these options is important to remember is that you should never have the power cord connected when you're working inside the computer, not because it's helpful for electrostatic discharge. It's helpful so that you're not electrocuted, which is a different kind of electricity. You don't want to take an electric discharge from the power source that's plugged into the computer. So anytime you're working inside of any device, make sure it's unplugged. It should never be connected to a power source ever. And surprisingly, you may find you should never, ever, ever connect yourself to an electrical ground. That is also a significant issue. You never want to connect to any part of the power system of a building, ever. There's always a risk for being shocked or even worse, electrocuted, and you do not want that to happen. The easiest thing you can do is disconnect from the electrical system of your building. Never, never, never do that. That's important. Of course, you always want to make sure you never touch those components directly, but that wasn't one of the options available. The only 5 options were to maintain humidity levels over 60%. That was the right answer. Answer C, the 39% of you answered that one. Disconnecting the power cord is an important safety. You should always disconnect it for safety, but it doesn't help control ESD. And lastly, using a grounded electrical connection also, not only is it something you should not be doing, that's dangerous to connect to a grounded electrical connection, it has nothing to do with stopping ESD. So an electrical ground and the electrostatic discharge are 2 very different things. Do not confuse them on your exam. Certainly don't confuse them in real life either. That is something you don't want to do. So hopefully you've got the feel of this. You're in the Q&A. All you have to do is stay on the page that you're on, stay on the mobile app that you're using. I will control the questions coming up at this point. You're doing very fine with that. Let's now go to new questions. That was our rewind question. I want to give you new questions. One thing to know on the exam, though, is that they are not all multiple choice questions. You might get questions that are not multiple choice. You will get questions that are not multiple choice. CompTIA calls these performance-based questions. These performance-based questions will probably be the first handful of questions you get at the beginning of the exam. So you might get 3 to 7 questions that ask you about topics from the exam objectives, but they ask you in ways that are not multiple choice questions. They might be drag and drop. They might be fill in the blank. It might put you at a command prompt and ask you to perform a function. It might give you a Windows screen and ask you to move around the Windows screen to perform a task. It might have you put things in a particular order from fastest to slowest or highest to lowest. You never know exactly what you would run into. So one of the questions I want to give you is one that I think it's really a fill in the blank for us this morning. But you can imagine this is a question that might be asked of you. They will put you into a command prompt in Windows, and they will ask you to perform a function. So that's what I'm going to do for you right now is I'm going to put you into a virtual command prompt, and here is the question. Here's the process I want you to follow inside of that command prompt. And the question is, a desktop administrator is concerned that a hard drive may have bad sectors. What command should be used to identify bad sectors? There's your question. Now, remember, no answering in the chat room, no hints in the chat room. We're going to pretend that we are right there in the test center itself, and you can answer the question at professormesser.com/QA. So a desktop administrator is concerned that a hard drive may have bad sectors. What command should be used to identify the bad sectors? Now, remember that you are a command prompt. You must not only know the command, but you must know all of the different flags and settings for these commands. So as you're putting in your command, remember you're typing this into a command prompt. You have to make sure that you use the entire command at this command prompt to be able to do that. Some of you are putting in some of those. That was a little bit of a hint, wasn't it? Don't just give me a single word. I'm looking for the entire set of options, of flags, of differentiating methods that you could use to be able to do this for the single command. That's what you should be working on. So think about that as you're putting this in. This is something they commonly do on the exams, is simply give you an open world to work with. It's not exactly open. You're limited in what you're able to do in these scenarios, but you can certainly play around with different things at that command until you're able to get it right. So it might be a command prompt. They might put you at a Windows screen that's got your start menu, and you're able to move around with those as well. So think about what this command might be at the command prompt. And some of you, I think, as I look at the answers coming in, because this is a fill in the blank on your side, and as I look at the answers coming in, some of you you know what you're looking for. You know what you're trying to do. You know what you're trying to get to. Some of you are right. In this particular case, most of you are not right. So if you put in an answer, some of you have tried a few different things. You're working through a few different options. You haven't quite gotten there yet. I would probably see in all the different options I have here, and I'm going to flip over to a screen on my side so I can verify what my answer is. I'm trying to count up how many people have gotten this one right. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 so far. 5, 6, 7. So I've gotten 56 answers, and 7 of you have got this one right so far. So this is one. There's 8. We got another one in. So this is one we're definitely going to work on here to figure out what this answer might be. 9. Can we get one more? Get more right answer. 63 answers have come in. We've gotten 9 correct answers of that. Somebody can do the math and tell me the percentage on that one. Since it doesn't have this count up on my side, I'm not able to give you a percentage, but that's about the right number. There's 10. We got 10 answers in. Well done. So let's go through what this is. Now, I would say 99% of you knew the command. You knew the command right away, what this command is, and that command is check disk. There it is. So check disk is the command that is able to evaluate not only the file system that we are using in our computer, so FAT32, NTFS, that's our file system, but it can also examine the physical sectors of the drive. Now, the check disk command itself, if you're trying to see if there are any problems with the file system, with FAT32, with NTFS, you simply run the check disk command. It will tell you if there's any errors, chkdsk, and you hit enter. Now, if you would like to fix those file system problems, you put another command at the end of this, a little tag, which is a /f option at the end. So checkdisk /f will not only examine the file system for any inconsistencies, but it will also correct or fix. That's what the F is for, is to fix that particular file system problem and find those inconsistencies with the file system itself. Now, we're talking about some very low-level issues here. This is the primary indexing system for all of the files on your computer. So it's like looking at your filing cabinet and fixing the doors so they work properly now, so that everything is exactly where it should be and your master indexes are correct and everything looks the way it should. But that wasn't the question, was it? The question asked, we are concerned that our hard drive may have bad sectors. What command should be used to identify bad sectors? Well, the logical file system has nothing to do with the sectors. If we want to examine each individual sector on the physical drive, then we would need to run a checkdisk /r. Checkdisk /r will go through the entire drive. And if you've got a very large drive, this will take a lot of time to be able to go through and look at each individual sector, examine the sector, make sure information can be read and written to that sector properly. And if there is a problem, it will try to recover as much data as possible from that sector and then mark that sector as being bad so that it will not use that sector again. Now, when you run a checkdisk /r, it also runs a /f first. So before it looks at any of the sectors, it checks your logical file system, checks to make sure NTFS is healthy, everything looks good there, and then it goes sector to sector to sector to sector and goes through your entire drive looking for those. Almost always there's going to be some type of service or application that has locked your volume, and so we'll ask you to do a restart to have this actually take place. So you'll say yes. Next time you restart your computer, it will bring up a screen. It will run through the check disk process and be able to see everything that is happening there. And if there are problems, it will repair those problems and your system will finally be back and available for you to use. If you do use the /R, it's going to take some time on our modern drives. Our modern drives are huge. We have a lot of sectors to go through. So this could take some time, and it takes even longer if you have sectors that are bad, because it takes a little bit more time to go through the sector and try to be able to recover all of those things. The chat room, what should you do if it says, I couldn't fix all the bad sectors? I would say you should back up immediately and perhaps consider getting a new drive very, very quickly. That would be a time to definitely take a backup. First thing, get your backup. Second thing, now figure out, maybe run some additional diagnostics on the drive, see why it's telling you that it couldn't fix all the bad sectors. If you are getting numerous bad sectors, it could be a warning sign that your drive is going bad. So definitely be very concerned when something like that happens. You do not want to be in a situation like that. So your proper answer on this one is check disk /R. That's the tag you were looking for. Now, if you typed into this check disk /F/R, if you check disk /F/R, then I would accept that. And in fact, the check disk command will accept that as well. That is one that it automatically is going to perform a /F anyway if you have specified a /R. So it's really just redundant when you do that. So that's something to consider when going through those pieces. Also important to keep your system healthy. So make sure that you're familiar with that. Well, how'd you do on your performance-based question? I think somebody did a calculation. What was it? 14% of us got that one right. So that's another one. There's a number of command lines you have to know on the exam. Make sure you're familiar with those. They are in the CompTIA exam objectives. Let's go back to some multiple choice questions. We feel a little more comfortable, right? I have one for you. Here is our first multiple choice question of the day, our first new multiple choice question of the day, which asks, a system administrator would like to verify the IP address of server www.example.com. Which of the following would provide this information? Would it be NSLOOKUP, netstat, DHCP, IPconfig, or netview? Those are your 5 different options. So hopefully those are familiar with you. If you're ever in a case where you're wondering what would it be for these, you've got 5 different options to work through. Maybe that's one that you're familiar with. A system administrator would like to verify the IP address of server www.example.com. Which of the following would provide this information? Would it be NSLOOKUP, netstat, DHCP, IPconfig, and netview? Now, if you think you know the answer, don't answer in the chat room. No hints in the chat room. We want to instead go to professormesser.com/QA, where the question is right there with all of those different options. You can answer that right at professormesser.com/QA. Lock in your answers, and we'll see how you do with this one. This is one I think we should all be familiar with. So we went from a command line question about the operating system, and we've kind of shifted to a command line question about the network, which is very much how this exam works. You will see this happen to you a lot on this exam. And there are a lot of command lines you have to know for this exam. You have to know command lines for DOS and Windows. I say DOS, but really Windows these days. We have to know command lines for Mac OS. We have to know command lines for Linux. Fortunately, the Mac OS and the Linux command lines are effectively identical. So if you know how to do it in Linux, you can probably do the same thing in Mac OS and vice versa. The command lines in Windows, slightly different. You don't have quite the number that you have to deal with for Mac OS and for Linux. Let's see how you folks did with this one. A system administrator would like to verify the IP address of server www.example.com. Which of the following would provide this information? How did we do? Well, 72% of you say you simply use NSLOOKUP. 15% of you say, no, you use IPconfig. That will tell you what you need to know. 7% of you say it's netstat, and then 6% of you say it's DHCP. Only 2% of you said it netview. All of these, of course, are all legitimate technologies that you have to know for the exam. Only one of them is used to verify IP addresses of a server that exists somewhere, I guess. We don't know exactly where that server happens to be, but the server is www.example.com. How could we get the IP address if all we know is the name of that server? We don't even know what operating system that server is running. We don't know if it's a Windows server. We don't know if it's a Linux server. We don't know if it's running Mac OS. We have no idea. But somehow we want to be able to convert that name of www.example.com to an IP address. And the best way to do that is NSLOOKUP. NSLOOKUP is used to query a name server and be able to retrieve information from that name server. For instance, the name of a server, the IP address of that server. There's timers that you have to deal with, especially if you're dealing with DNS configurations. Certainly timers and canonical names will be in there as well. There's a lot of different options in there, but NSLOOKUP is one that is commonly available in Windows. If you are in Linux or Mac OS, NSLOOKUP may be available in the operating system that you're using. It's much more common to see DIG, D-I-G, being used in those operating systems. And there is a version of DIG available for Windows that you can download and put onto your system if you prefer using DIG. I kind of like, I dig DIG. I like DIG. It's a nice utility. I think it's easier to use. I think the syntax is a little bit easier to use than NSLOOKUP, but they effectively provide you with similar information. I think DIG's output is a little bit easier to read as well. So NSLOOKUP is what we were looking for. If you answered A, NSLOOKUP, 70% of you got that one absolutely right. 16% of you said ipconfig. And if you were sitting on a machine that was Windows and you were at a command prompt and you happened to know that that machine was the one that provided the service for www.example.com, ipconfig could have been your answer there. But we have no idea, given the question was so vague about where the server even existed, or if we even had access to the command line of the server, which we may not. In fact, I don't think any of us have access to www.example.com because example.com is actually a domain set aside to be used for examples. So we have no idea where that server happens to be, and none of us have access to the command line of that server. ipconfig would not help us in that scenario. Netstat is used to provide network statistics on your local machine. So you're able to see devices that are connecting to your device and the devices that you are connecting to. You can see all of those with Netstat. DHCP is a protocol, not a command. DHCP is used for Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol for your automatic IP configurations on your local workstations. And NetView is a Windows command. If you're using Windows and you're trying to view the different Windows devices and Windows shares on the network, NetView is a command that you can use to be able to do that. So if you answered A, NSLOOKUP, 69% of you got that one absolutely right. Let's do another multiple choice question. Let's flip to this next one. This next question asks, let me flip it on the Socrative side too so we can all see it. A security administrator is trying to clean a malware infection, but the malware is moving between systems without any user intervention. Which of these would best describe this malware? You have 5 options available. Is it a rootkit? Is it a virus? Is it a worm? Is it a botnet? Or is it ransomware? A security administrator is trying to clean a malware infection, but the malware is moving between systems without any user intervention. Which of these would best describe this malware? Is it a rootkit, a virus, a worm, a botnet, or ransomware? That's a little bit of a trivia question, I think, but it does give you a scenario of things that are happening, and that's the type of question you would commonly get on the A+ exam. If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. You can answer the question right there as well. Lock in your answer. Let's see what you think the right answer is for this question. This poor security administrator trying to clean the malware infection. I think we've all been there. So what do you do? In fact, this one I was thinking this question was going a different direction. I thought it would be asking us the things we should do to get rid of this malware. Nope, we're first trying to identify, what is this? What are we dealing with? What is the problem we're trying to solve? We often jump to step 3 or 4 when we're trying to troubleshoot some of these problems. Sometimes we should pull that back a little bit and figure out, what are we working with? What is really the problem that's occurring? And only then can we come up with a very good line of defense after that, trying to resolve the issue. Let's see how you did with this one. Security administrator trying to clean that malware infection. The malware is moving between systems without any user intervention. That sounds spooky. Which of these would best describe this malware? 77% of you say it's a worm. And that's one where you really have to be concerned for those worms. It's the one that got the most number of votes. It also has all single digits for everything else. So virus was only 9%, botnet 7%, rootkit 5%, ransomware 3%. You guys feel like this is you feel very secure in your answers here on this one with that 77%. This does feel like a Security Plus question. In fact, this type of question, or the subject matter, the objective itself, is also duplicated on the Security Plus exam. So if you know this, you know some things you're already ready for once you get to the Security Plus exam. Well, 76% of you say worms. I would say you're absolutely correct. Worms is the right answer. A worm is a question, a worm is a type of technology, a type of malware that will move between systems with no user intervention. A virus typically requires the user to click something. It requires the user to click an executable that's infected so that the executable can get into the memory of a system and then start operating. A worm, though, is working at a completely different level. Usually it's finding a service that's already running, finding a vulnerability in that service, and then piggybacking onto that already running service to be able to replicate itself between systems. So that's one that does come in handy for the folks that are trying to get the worms propagated. Does not come in handy for us, the ones that have to now keep our systems from being infected. So this is why you will have these situations with ransomware, where the ransomware finds a way to get into a system, and then the worm begins propagating itself to all of these other systems. And we've seen recently the stories of these network administrators or system administrators that walk into the office, and when they left on Friday, everything was fine. When they walk in Monday morning, every system is infected with ransomware because nobody had to be there. Did not need you, the human, to provide any type of intervention. It simply hops around from there. There are firewalls, IPS, and anti-malware can stop these from infesting systems. But once that worm gets inside, especially if there's an existing vulnerability and it has not been patched, it's so simple for this worm to hop around and be able to do everything that it needs to do. So if you did answer 76% of you with the worm, answer C, that was the correct answer. Virus, as we already mentioned, requires human intervention. A botnet is one that is able to connect to systems without any user intervention, but once it's there, being able to interact with that system requires that there be either a worm in place, and the botnet is simply the delivery method for the virus or for the worm. A rootkit is a type of malware that sits underneath the operating system, if you want to think of it that way, at the foundational level of the operating system. Fortunately, rootkits are extremely rare, and thankfully we have technologies in place such as Secure Boot that can help us protect against rootkits. And ransomware, only 3% of you chose that. Ransomware, again, is a type of malware that's delivered as a virus or a worm to be able to get into a system, very commonly delivered with a worm and then suddenly run as ransomware on a system. So well done. If you was one of the 77% on C, you got that one absolutely right. Well done with that. There is so much on the 221,001 and the 221,002 exam. We've only hit on the highlights so far in this study group. I of course, have videos on every single topic that's in the CompTIA exam objectives. I go through them one by one, all the way through until I cover every single objective that's listed in those objectives. But of course, that means that I've created over 100 videos to cover all of these different topics. And although I go through all 100 of those videos to create them, you may not have time to sit there and watch every single video to be able to gather this information. I, of course, recommend you get a good book, you do some hands-on, you get some Q&A, and you watch these videos. But I think you should also take good notes as you're going through these topics. And if you aren't able to take notes, I've already done it for you. I've created my course notes, which are a set of notes where I've taken all of the text, all of the graphics, all of those important charts from all of my videos, and I put them into one single PDF file for you. This is something you can not only use during your studies, but you can use it after you've gone through the videos to help you remember some of these topics before walking in to take your exam. The PDF itself, I think I've got it up on the screen. We can show this to you. If I click the right thing on my side, I will give you a view of this PDF. Here is the Core 2 PDF. There it is. So this PDF is one for the 1002 exam. It's over 50 pages long with all of these details. And as I scroll through, you can see the charts here for the upgrades. You've got information about installing operating systems, the upgrade paths, all the command line tools, and so much more. It's all in the course notes. They are extensive. There's a lot there to go through. And this is something that is available not only in its physical form or the digital form that you just saw, there's also a physical form of this available as well. Here's the physical book. There it is. It's the same book. It's the same information. It's just in a format that's a book form. And if you purchase the book form, you also get the PDF for free. So it's a little bonus. While you're waiting for this to be delivered to you in the mail, you'll be able to download the PDF and use that as well. You can find out more about this at professormesser.com/1000notes. Find out everything you need to know for those notes on the exam. It doesn't replace a book. It doesn't replace the videos. There are no shortcuts in being able to work through these things, but I think it might help you remember and categorize and have everything in a compact form when you're ready to study for your exam. And for those of you in the chat room, you've already mentioned you've got the course notes, you love them, you use them. Thank you for your support. Every dollar of this goes back to help keep the website running. The lights are on, the stream is running thanks to you. So thanks for your ongoing support there as well. Let's get some more questions in today. I've got another one here for you. Here's another multiple choice question. There is questions here that ask, let me click on my side so I can see it. Here's the question. When starting Windows, a user receives this message, quote, "One or more services failed to start," end quote. That's not a great message to get, by the way. So the questioning continues, which of the following would be the best way to address this issue? So when starting Windows, a user receives this message, quote, "One or more services failed to start." Which of the following would be the best way to address this issue? Would it be to A, start in VGA mode, B, reinstall the problematic service, C, reseat all expansion cards and cables, D, modify the Windows BCD, or E, change the boot drive? Those are your 5 different options. So you've got start in VGA mode, reinstall the problematic service, reseat all expansion cards and cables, modify the Windows BCD, or change the boot drive. Those 5 options are available. If you think you know the answer, don't answer in the chat room. Go to professormesser.com/QA. That's where you need to go and lock in your answer. We'll see how you do in troubleshooting this message. And I have gotten this message many times before in working with Windows. This is going to be a challenging question, challenging problem to be able to work through. Hopefully that's the case there when you're working through all of those pieces. I like to go through and methodically figure out what's going on, and we can talk more about that as we look at the answer to this question. But whenever you're starting up, whenever you see an error when you're starting up, that could be a significant issue, or it might not be. We need to find out. So which of the following would be the best way to address that issue? This question, by the way, is interesting in the way that it states what it's looking for. You'll see this on the exam a lot. It says, which of the following would be the best way? It's not saying what is the best way of all time. Of all the things you could ever possibly do, what would be the best thing to do? That's not the question. The question says, here's a list of things. There's 5 things. and which of these would be the right thing to do. So hopefully your one has been working through this as well. I think that's one you should try to figure out. And if you're getting this on your Windows startup, this might help you resolve the question. Let's see how you did with this one. Some of you are struggling with the answers and some of the other things that are here. So let's break it down for you and see what the possible options might be. Let's see how we did with this one. And indeed, we're not sure. We're very torn on this one. So 36% of you say to reinstall the problematic service. 27% of you say to modify the Windows BCD. We'll talk more about what that is in a moment. And then it's almost a three-way tie for third place for starting in VGA mode, reseating all expansion cards and cables, and changing the boot drive. That's 13, 12, and 11% respectively. It's effectively a tie for third. So what should we be doing for this problem? One or more services failed to start. This is a problem, by the way, that is listed, specifically listed in the CompTIA exam objectives. So they expect that you know how to resolve this type of problem. So one or more services failed to start. What is going on here? So of course, when we start up our computer, when we use it and we do anything at our desktop, we're in a browser, we're doing word processing, we're working on a spreadsheet. That is a program or an application that we're using right on the desktop of the computer. But behind the scenes, of course, there are many, in some cases, well over 100, sometimes more than 100 different services that are running. There are programs that are running behind the scenes, and programs that are run behind the scenes that do not need any user intervention are called services. That's the term that we use in Windows to describe those two things. When you start your system, before you even start a program, the services are starting up. There are services to spool printouts. There are services to make sure that the video is working properly. There are services, and if you look at the list of services in Windows, there are hundreds of services available there for things to work with. You may find that that's certainly an issue. The question here was a problem that was very specific that asked one or more services failed to start. Usually this is a service that is not configured properly. It's looking for a type of hardware that's not there. It's something is not quite right with that program. The program can't start up because something else isn't allowing it to start up. So now we have to figure out where's the problem. That's such a vague error, isn't it? It tells you nothing. It doesn't tell you what service failed to start. It doesn't tell you the name of the service that failed to start. It doesn't tell you the number associated with it. It tells you nothing. Windows gives you nothing to be able to troubleshoot this. So you have to figure this out. And what you want to do is now go to Event Viewer, find out what service was complaining, which service failed to start during the startup. You may be able to look at the list of services on your computer and identify it from there, but that becomes very difficult because there are, as I mentioned, hundreds of services here to deal with. Now, if you recently changed something on your computer, you might realize what service it happens to be. And you can go into your services and try starting up the service manually. You can check the account permissions. Sometimes services will use the system account. Sometimes services use a separate account to start up, and maybe somebody changed the password of that account, and it can no longer start up properly. There are service dependencies. So some services can't start up unless other services are running. And there can be multiple dependencies. Fortunately, Windows Services panel will show you what the dependencies are for your service and what other services depend on the service that you're looking at, because it works both ways, doesn't it? And now you have a Windows service. There's system files associated with that. And if it's a service associated with an application, you may want to reinstall that application. So it's a lot of different things you can do to be able to resolve this problem. Fortunately, this question gave you a subset of things to work on. It said, which of the following would be the best way to address this issue? So let's look at the following. 38% of you say to reinstall the problematic service. And of all the 5 things that are here, that one is the right answer. That's the only answer that can help you address this specific error. One or more services failed to start. You reinstall that service. That may not fix the issue, but at least it's something you can do to help provide troubleshooting of that particular issue. 25% of you say to modify the Windows boot configuration data. That is the BCD. If you ever change or modify the BCD, or perhaps you have different operating systems running on your computer, and you may get a menu when you start up your system that allows you to choose what operating system you would like to boot during that boot up process. The behind-the-scenes information that determines where the operating systems are on this drive and how they would start up is called the boot configuration data, or the BCD. This boot configuration data becomes very useful in being able to change the way Windows starts up, how it uses CPUs, how much memory it uses, where it starts Windows from. There's a lot of information there that you could use for the boot configuration data. So you do have to be familiar with using and modifying that BCD. A lot of this, I think, is in the 1001 exam. So you may want to go back and look at some of that if you're interested. But once you get Windows started, you're already running. The BCD, the boot configuration data, has already booted Windows. It's no longer the issue. So modifying the Windows BCD can't possibly be an issue with the service because we've already started Windows. The other options available, 12% of you said to reseat all expansion cards and cables, which may or may not help. It's another one of those situations where we don't know yet what service is not starting or why. So we're simply just trying things randomly. If we now open up the computer, pull out cards, and start putting them back in and reseating them, you're just taking a guess on something that you haven't figured out yet might be the issue. So probably not your best course of action. Changing the boot drive, that's not even usually an option. Usually you're booting from a boot drive. There's usually a single operating system. And the problem that we're having here of one or more services failed to start is not related to what drive you're booting from. It's related to what the operating system service is trying to do. So that's another one that's there. And lastly, starting in VGA mode. So folks in the chat room are saying, what are you talking about, VGA mode? Well, if you are hitting that F8 key during startup and you get that Windows startup screen with all of those different options, for instance, the one that allows you to start into safe mode, one of the options on that startup screen is also to start in VGA mode. VGA mode is a basic video configuration. So if you think your problem is related to video, you're getting a blank screen when you start up, you're getting weird, the screen is unreadable, it's not syncing properly with the monitor, maybe somebody changed the monitor out, that is one where now we need to start Windows in a very generic video mode so we can help troubleshoot this. And VGA is the most generic video mode you can find. And starting in VGA mode, a very useful troubleshooting tool, but has nothing to do with revolving or solving a service that is not starting properly. Not going to do that for you. So the only possible answer here by far is answer B, reinstalling the problematic service, which is something you probably get to later. Your first thing would be to determine what service is not having what service is not starting properly. Maybe you go to the event viewer. Maybe you go to the list of the services. You try to figure out what service it is, and once you realize it, then you can reinstall that service. I have a feeling it's going to be one where, yeah, I just installed this thing, and now I'm getting an error. It must be related to the thing I just installed. That's usually how it works on my system as well. If you are watching this video for continuing education credit, I would be glad to send you an email that has a digitally signed certificate on it that says you must have watched this because you followed these instructions. You must follow these instructions to earn the CEU. Go to the top or the bottom of the ProfessorMesser.com website. There's a Contact Us link. Click that Contact Us link. It brings up a form. Make sure you put your name, your email address. That one's pretty important because I will be emailing this back to you. And there's a subject line there if you would be nice enough to say that this is the 220-1002 September study group, and put the super secret code word of the month, which is VGA mode. I guess it's a code words. Your super secret code words of the month, VGA mode. And there's also a body that you could put, text that you can put into the message itself. You're welcome to put anything you would like in there. If you want to put a message to me, I'm the one reading through all of these. You're more than welcome to do that. Or simply just put VGA mode in there. It can be very, very concise. Just put, here's what I want, VGA mode. That's it. I know exactly what you'll mean. You don't have to put any extra text other than that. I gotcha. I understand what you want. And then it usually takes me a week or two to turn these around and get them back to you. And you'll see the email will arrive from me with an attachment that has in that attachment the digital signature for this. Some of you don't collect CEUs anymore. You simply use the renewal, the CertMaster CE renewal that's on the CompTIA website so that you don't have to collect these CEUs any longer. Some of you use these for other things, and that's well. If you have not taken your test yet, you cannot yet collect the CEUs. CEUs are only good once you pass your exam, and only then can you start collecting the CEUs. So that would be the way to do it. So hopefully that will help you out. For those of you interested in that CertMaster CE, you haven't heard of that before, there's a video I put on the YouTubes. It's called How to Renew Your CompTIA Certification in Just a Few Hours. I think it's literally the title of the video. How to Renew Your CompTIA Certification in Just a Few Hours. And I describe all the different ways to renew your certification, but then I give you more detail about the CertMaster CE because I think it's a great way to renew and work through those things. Well, let's move on now that we understand how to reinstall the problematic service and get this problem resolved. Let's do another question. This is an administrator question. Here we go. This one asks, an administrator would like to automate some functions in a user's local browser. Which of these would be the best choice? An administrator would like to automate some functions in a user's local browser. Which of these would be the best choice? Would it be JavaScript, PowerShell, batch file, VB or shell script? Those are your 5 options. Administrator would like to automate some functions in a user's local browser. Which of these would be the best choice? Would it be JavaScript, PowerShell, batch file, VB or shell script? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. You can answer the question right there. Suddenly, we have to know more about scripting for the 220-1002. There's a whole section on scripting in the latest version of the exam. Fortunately, you don't have to know how to script. You just have to know the basics of scripting in an operating system. So this is an important one to know. Hopefully you're familiar with some of these scripts. If you're not, then you're going to have to study these for your exam. You have to know what all of these happen to be. This is something I think the industry itself is trying to do a lot more with automation, or it's trying to make sure that everyone else know that it's trying to do more with automation. Automation in IT is something that's not new at all. Back in the 1990s, we had concepts of dark rooms, which was the data center room where you just keep the lights off. Nobody needs to go in there because the whole thing is able to run on its own. The whole thing is scripted and automated. And you effectively, as an administrator, become someone who can just manage and monitor that system. So that becomes useful to be able to script these. Any way that you can automate processes in IT becomes very useful. I have the process, for example, of sending you back the continuing education unit credit with the digital signatures is an automated process on my side. I look at the message, I see that everything is correct, I click a button, it scrapes all the information out of the email that you sent. It puts it into a format in another email. If that looks good to me, I click send. So instead of me having to copy and paste and move things around and get it just right and have the text and then send it, which used to take, I used to do this manually. It would take me a long time it would take me minutes at a time just to send one of these. Now it literally takes me seconds to see a message, click, 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 send, and it's gone. I still have a little bit of manual. I like to look at it and make sure everything looks okay. I like to check and make sure you've got the right words and everything in there. But everything usually is perfect and it only takes me a couple seconds now. So right there. I would not say, some of you in the chat room are saying, this is kind of a programmer's question, isn't it? Well, programming and scripting, I would not necessarily say are the same thing. I know there's a Venn diagram you can create there. And in the Venn diagram of programming, I think there's a little scripting bubble inside of it. I get it. But I consider programming to be someone who is building an app. There is an entire set of computer science degrees and specifications around programming. On the IT side, we're not really programmers. We're scripters. We're automators. We're orchestrators. I would not call us programmers. That's a little bit different. But I understand when people say, yeah, this is programming, right? I guess, well, yes, technically, yes. But it's not. Programming is a completely different animal that has nuances and specific details about it that you have to spend years only programming to be able to ever become proficient at it. So I would not say that Python or scripts or any of these have anything to do with programming. They are incredibly important scripting languages, however, and it's very useful if you know some of these things. The more Python and Perl and JavaScript and PowerShell and batch file and VBScript and shell script you know, the more powerful administrator you're going to be, the more valuable, and not just valuable in your skills, but valuable financially to an organization. So these are directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. The folks here that are so concerned about these questions, they do come directly from the exam objectives. So you absolutely need to know this for these things. Let's see how we did. And we can see in our list, 39% of you say it's JavaScript. That's what does it. 25% of you say it's batch file. That's what does it. 15% said PowerShell, and then a tie for fourth at 11% apiece with VBScript and shell script. Each one of these scripting languages has advantages and disadvantages associated with it. Each one of these scripting languages has a very common use in where you will see it being used. There is no single scripting language that you can use in every circumstance across every operating system, regardless of what happens. You will probably be in a situation where you need to be familiar with many different kinds of scripting languages. This one was very specific. It asked that you would like to automate functions in a user's local browser. So already there's a subset of scripts and scripting languages you would like to look at. The one that deals with a local browser, you should immediately think, well, it's JavaScript. That is scripting inside of your browser. You go to a website these days, you're going to be doing some JavaScript, no question. So this is one where the JavaScript becomes very useful at manipulating things inside of a browser screen. That's what we built JavaScript to do. Now, JavaScript, do I even mention it here? I think I do mention it here, that we're not just scripting inside the browser. Some people don't realize that the programming language Java is not the same thing as the scripting language JavaScript. There's nothing about those that is similar. They are two completely different things. They have different origins, different developers, different everything. The only thing that's the same between them is, unfortunately, they both chose the name Java in the name, but they are very different. So, for instance, there's been a big push to make sure that Java apps don't run in your operating system, and Java apps don't run in a browser, more importantly, because Java programming language has some vulnerabilities associated with it, and it could be considered a security risk on the desktop. So we don't tend to run Java apps in a browser anymore. JavaScript, though, incredibly common. If you're on YouTube, if you're on the ProfessorMesser.com website, if you're on any website, there's tons of JavaScript running. So that's why you have to also be sure you use the right terminology. If you're in an interview and you're talking about all the scripting you did in a browser, and the entire time you describe it as Java, the people you're talking to will tell you, well, no, you did JavaScript. That's a completely different animal. You're not even quite sure what you're explaining in that scenario. So make sure you know the differences between those two and working through them. It becomes useful to know those. Let's see how we did on this one. You can see that 40% of you say, yeah, it's JavaScript. That's what it is, and you're correct. 40% of you are absolutely right. It was JavaScript. 25% said a batch file. Batch files are very good for running scripts in an operating system outside of the browser. It's very common to do. PowerShell is kind of an updated version of a batch file that is specific to running in Windows. That's one you would find there. VBScript stands for Virtual Basic Script. Very common to use VBScript inside of applications such as Microsoft Word or Microsoft Excel. And shell scripts are the Linux or OS X, OS 10 version, the Mac OS version of a batch file. In fact, sometimes you just call those a batch file as well. They are for operating system functions, not something that you would run inside of a browser. So those of you that answered JavaScript, answered A, got it absolutely right. So well done with that. Now, I know we're at the top of the hour, but I'm feeling good. Let's do one more question. I think we can sneak another one in before we're done today. So let's get one more question in. We're in overtime now. And the next question on our list asks, a system administrator needs to enable Windows application access to a SQL database. Which of the following would be the best choice for this task? A system administrator needs to enable Windows application access to an SQL database or a SQL database or a Squirrel database, we say here in the South. Which of the following would be the best choice for this task? Would it be Device Manager? Would it be Component Services? Would it be Local Security Policy? Would it be Services? Or would it be ODBC Data Sources? So we got 5 different options there. Device Manager, Component Services, Local Security Policy, Services, or ODBC Data Sources. There's your 5 options. Now, if you think you know what this one happens to be, you can go to professormesser.com/QA, lock in your answer on these. Some of you may have had to work through this before, figuring out these details, especially if you're working with applications and working with SQL. You never know the scenarios you run into in an operating system. Very often you have to work with the application development team to make sure that the application is going to run properly on your Windows desktops. Well, to be able to do that, we need to make some changes to the operating system. So this question is asking you to how to make those changes. System administrator needs to enable Windows application access to a SQL database. Which of the following would be the best choice for this task? Hopefully you know. Hopefully maybe some of you have worked through this before. I know that I have. There have been times when I have needed to be able to do this. So hopefully it's one where you've had to do this as well. And it does come in handy to have this functionality. We'll talk more about this and how powerful this is in just a moment. Really not just powerful for the user of the operating system, but also very powerful for the application developers. So it comes in handy for them as well. Very useful to have this functionality. Let's see how you did. A lot of you are Googling the different options right now. I can tell. I can see the numbers that are counting up. I always watch this number that 88 people have answered this question so far. And I expect a certain number over time. If a lot of you know the question, know the answer, it goes up very quickly. If a lot of people are Googling, stop Googling. Then it goes up a little bit slower. Let's see how we did with this one. Again, we're a little bit torn. 48% said ODBC data sources, and 33% say local security policy. 9% single digits say services, 6% say component services, and 5% say device manager. So what would we need to do to be able to see and access that database? Well, the answer almost in the name of the answer here. We need the ODBC data sources. The DB for database, the Open Database Connectivity. This is an interesting capability in Windows and one that really provides the application developers with a lot of flexibility because they are able now to write applications and not have to worry about what the database is behind the scenes. So in your environment, you might use Microsoft Access as your database. As in other places, you may use Microsoft SQL Server. In other places, you might use Oracle's SQL database, or you might use MySQL database. All of those are different databases. And the back-end process of saving and restoring and pulling data from those databases is a little bit different between all of them. So what Windows does is it puts a shim in the middle called ODBC, your Open Database Connectivity. So really the application can be written with a complete unknowingness of what's in the back-end database. This allows the application developer to concentrate on the app, and they just tell Windows, hey, I'm going to send you some data. Whatever database you got back there, just store it in that database, please. And it's ODBC that makes that connection between. It's the middleware between the operating system applications and the database that's on the back end. Really ingenious that it's in Windows. There's many applications that take advantage of ODBC. Some of you in the chat room have even said, yeah, I do this all the time. I use ODBC in Microsoft Excel to be able to access a SQL database or some other type of database on the back end. And I simply run a command in my Excel, and it pulls that data and populates all my Excel spreadsheet cells. Very simple to do because of ODBC, a great functionality, but sometimes it requires you to configure and set up these different ODBC data sources. So you'll have to, as the administrator, put all of those data sources in. You probably have to work with your application teams. You probably have to work with your database teams and make sure that all of this is here. Now, all of this with these databases are certainly important to know. It's ODBC, and the use of the ODBC data sources is an important part of the exam objectives. Make sure you're familiar with those. Now, I use the term, in this case, I use the term SQL. And even if you didn't know that SQL had anything to do with databases, because I'm not even sure the term SQL, Structured Query Language, is even in the exam objectives, the term database is certainly something you should know. And I will tell you that in your work in IT, SQL, as a very common standard of databases, you will run into constantly. So even if you didn't know what a SQL database was, you probably should have been able to answer the right one here, which is the ODBC data sources. And which one do I have here? In fact, my example I gave on my videos even says we're going to load up a data source to a SQL server. It's so common that why wouldn't I use that as an example? You'll probably be doing that on your side as well. You folks did really good on that one. 50% of you, I would say we hit right in the middle. Say, yeah, so ODBC data sources is the utility that we should be using to work well with those. And you were absolutely right. That is the one you should use to be able to work that particular issue. So make sure you're familiar with that. It is one of those control panel applets you need to know about for your A+ exam. All the questions we did today, even the ones you didn't recognize, came directly from the CompTIA 220-1002 exam objectives. It's a PDF file that has a list of all of the objectives in it. It is extensive. And some of you in the chat room have said, yep, I download these and use them. Good for you. They should be the first thing you download when you start your studies. They should be the last thing you use as a checklist before you go into your exam. If you're somebody coming in the chat room and say you studied previous versions of the A+ exam, this is one that you need to know, that these are all the latest things to know. Make sure you're familiar with those. You can download them at professormesser.com/objectives. There's a link that will take you right to the CompTIA website to be able to see those. We do one of these study groups almost once a week. We do a study group. This week we do 2 a week. This is our second this week. We do an A+ study group, 2 A+ study groups every month. So come back in October, on October 8th and October 10th, we do our 220-1001 and our 220-1002 A+ study groups. Or come back next week. Next Wednesday, we have a Network Plus study group. The week after that, we have a Security Plus study group. There's always something going on. And if you would like to see when the next live event is going to be, you can always go to the Professor Messer website. There's a calendar link on the top menus, or you can simply go to professormesser.com/calendar, and you'll find it exactly when we will be live again. Well, even though the part where I ask you the questions is over, I'm going to turn this around, and for the next hour, you can ask me questions, whatever you'd like to know. There's already some coming in on the website, on the chat room. We'll talk about the 2009 version of the A+ and get those there. Don't forget about the A+ question every day on Twitter. Don't forget to subscribe on the YouTube. Thank you for doing that, by the way. I now have a single person who I can talk to at Google, at the YouTube folks, and we talk all the time. We have conference calls. How can we keep the websites going? How's the videos running? What can we do to make the videos easier for people to view? It's been great working with him. Would not be able to do that unless you subscribe to the channel. So thank you for doing that. Don't forget about the course notes, professormesser.com/1000 notes. And of course, the calendar's there as well. Stick around for the next hour. We're going to be doing more Q&A. We'd love to have you here. Thanks for joining us this time. We will see you next time on the A+ Study Group. Well, let me see if I can get my face up here. There we go. See if that's there. Now, I need to call in to the show first, and then you will be able to call into the show after this. That's, of course, if you're interested in calling in. That uses a telephone for voice communication. Let's get this up and running. Get this here. I need to put in, I'm not even the right web page to have this here. Thankfully, now I am. This goes a little faster. Let's host a show, shall we? And I'm going to start the show. And I click these buttons on my screen. Now, before you can call into the show, I have to call into the show. And then we will answer questions for you about this. So let me call in. You'll hear some noise here. Thank you. You're welcome. And we'll type some things into. This is another one that I need to automate, isn't it?
Enter your 6-digit PIN number.
See, if I had this automated, I wouldn't even have to do anything. It would just be working.
Welcome.
See, welcome. It all works, which means you're also able to call in if you would like to. I'm also taking questions from the chat room. So feel free to put any questions in there. I'll see them as they're going by. I'll try to catch them as they're going by, but you're welcome to put them in. If they scroll off, put them in again, and we'll find them there. If you're in the continental U.S., you can call in at 855-785-RJ45. That'll get you right into the phone lines. If you are outside of the continental U.S., you can use Skype for free. It doesn't use any Skype minutes. To use for free anywhere in the world, you put a +1 at the beginning. So it'll be +1 855-785-7545. That's the number that's up there on the screen, and you're welcome to call in. All right, earlier in the chat, we had some folks asking about the earlier versions of the A+ exam, asking if the CompTIA 2009 A+ certification is still useful. Some of you don't remember the days back when you took the A+ exam and it was good for life. Sometimes you'll see this abbreviated as GFL, good for life. And the GFL version of the A+ exam, if you got your A+ exam back in those days, your A+ exam is still good for life. It's still perfectly valid A+ certification. Unfortunately, though, many employers would like you to have the updated version of the A+ exam that is called the A+ CE for continuing education. So they expect that you will be constantly renewing and staying up to date with all of the latest technologies. Otherwise, you're back in that version of A+ where you work with Windows XP. Now, nobody uses that anymore. So the employers want you to see that you've been constantly renewing it, that you're up to date with all of the latest things. So I would say, yes, your A+ certification back from 2009, still valid, still perfectly reasonable thing to have, but it has less value than it used to because it's so old. It's one of the things, the challenge. That's one of the good reasons I think that CompTIA has a renewal process now, so that you are constantly making sure you're staying up to date with all the latest technologies, and employers know that you are as well, which is perhaps even more important. Let's go to the phone lines to New Jersey. Let's bring up this caller, 973 area code. Hello, caller. Thank you for calling in. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, how's it going, Professor Mercer? This is for Orlando again.
Hey,
I
Orlando.
called on the last month, I believe it was.
Well, thanks for calling in again. Good to talk to you. What can we do for you?
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for your content. I took my 1001 today, and I passed it with a 753. I couldn't thank you enough. Like I mentioned, also my wife took her Security Plus, and she passed it as well. She did really well. And we relied on all your content. We used the exam objectives, took a lot of practice tests, read the book.
Nice.
And all your advice definitely paid off. I couldn't thank you enough. So yeah, but I just wanted to ask. Now moving on to the 1002 exam. I have to be completely honest with you. I have a laptop from like 2011 from my high school days. And I was just wondering if there's any other alternatives, because I know you always mention, I listened to all your podcasts as well when I was preparing for the 1001. You always mentioned that the labs, CompTIA, about the labs that you used to recommend. I was just wondering, are there any alternatives to that besides the modern.ie?
Well, first, congratulations on the 1001. That's a big bar to finally get over, and I know it's got to feel good because that, I think, more than the 1002 exam, the 1001 has all of those interfaces and ports, and there's the networking, and there's just a lot of things you have to memorize and get in your brain for the 1001. So congratulations with that. And now you're shifting gears to 1002. So you're absolutely on the right mindset of now we have to get into operating systems and security and some of the troubleshooting with that. It's going to be really useful if you're able to do that across different operating systems. You have to know Windows 7, you have to know Windows 8.1, you have to know Windows 10. And although there are very similar pieces between all of those, there are minor differences in those different operating systems. You may recall, as you mentioned, back in the day, this was about 2 years ago, and beyond, there was a set of live labs available from GTS Learning. Well, GTS Learning was purchased by CompTIA about a year and a half ago, and at that point, they stopped offering the live labs. So at that point, I didn't offer them either because GTS Learning was who I was partnered with to be able to make that available. And once those products went away, I really didn't have an option. And I still really don't have a good option for you. There are some labs that you can get from third parties on Amazon that I saw, but I've never tried them. I really need to purchase one of those sets that's out on Amazon. They're from some of the big publishers, from like Pearson and Cybex, and some of those have offerings out there on Amazon that you can download and run on your machine. I've never run them, so I can't give them the check mark, but I at least know they exist, so that at least that's an option available to you. If you have something like a relatively new machine, or the laptop that you have happens to have enough memory or enough storage on it, and you can use virtual machines, you may want to go out to modern.ie, modern.ie. Modern.ie is Microsoft's developer website, and they will provide you with a pull down there for tools. There are virtual machines on their site that allow you to download Windows 7, Windows 8.1, and Windows 10. And so from there, you can download and run those operating systems as a VM. You just have to make sure that your machine you're using can handle the storage and the additional memory required to run that additional operating system. But it runs like a champ. It's free. It's a full-blown version of these operating systems, and you don't have to spend any money, which is perhaps the most important part. That might be a good option for you as well.
Okay, just a quick follow-up question. Unfortunately for me, the laptop that I have is, like I mentioned, extremely old.
Right.
It only has like 2 gigs of RAM.
Wow, okay.
Intel i3, extremely low-spec laptop, so I might have to invest some money. Follow-up question. What laptop do you recommend? I'm definitely not leaning towards any MacBooks right now because they have a keyboard issue with the keyboards are super unreliable. So do you have any recommendations right now for me to a laptop to get prepared for the 1002?
Well, I feel you on trying to figure out what a good laptop will be these days. Hardware is one of the most difficult things to try to work through. I have had my MacBook for 2 years now. Runs like a champ. That's not the view of the MacBook. That it runs fantastically. I've never run into a keyboard problem with this one. And as I understand it, they've already re-engineered the keyboard anyway for the folks that were having problems. But that said, some people would just prefer not having an Apple piece of hardware anyway. If I had to purchase a non-Apple, a Windows-compatible laptop right now, I'm not even sure which one I would get. There's a lot of good options in the chat room. People are thinking ThinkPads. Some people are getting, the gamers in here are saying, you should get the Razer. Hello. Get the Alienware laptop for that. It's effectively Dell these days, right? So get a Dell laptop. Dell's the one I almost always was my go-to. So if I was going to get a laptop, it was always going to be a Dell. And if I had to buy one now without any type of research whatsoever, it would probably be a Dell laptop as well, just because I knew I could get support on it. Whenever I purchase laptops, I always get ones that I know someone can repair locally. Sometimes that's hard to do. HP does have good laptops. Lenovo's laptops are good as well. It's difficult to find one. These days, they're becoming more and more generic in what people are looking for. But if you stick with the brand names, I don't think you're going to run into a problem, at least not a significant issue. It may be more along the lines, if you're going to spend money, it may be more of a budgeting issue, and you're determining what manufacturer's product to buy based on what's currently on sale, which is a perfectly reasonable thing to do as well. I think the folks in the chat room are right to stay away from things like a Chromebook. That doesn't help you for your A+ exam. You'll need to get something that you can run virtual machines on, and that's got plenty of storage space and memory to be able to support those. But fortunately, that's not a huge thing. You need 16 gig of memory and you can run a VM. So that's not your biggest challenge. Your biggest challenge is just finding the right price for what you're trying to do. And sometimes that is the hardest part.
Okay, my top choices right now are the Dell XPS or a MacBook Pro. So I'll just keep researching those. And I'm glad to hear that your MacBook didn't have any keyboard issues, because I'm always constantly reading about all these new MacBooks. After like the 2015 one, they all had keyboard reliability issues. So I try to stay away from those. But I do like the MacBooks though. So it's either XPS or a MacBook Pro.
I love the XPS. I've had the XPS. I've had different models of Dell XPS through the years. So I've always stuck with them and they've always worked for me. Plus, I always like to do a little bit of gaming on them. So it's nice to have a little bit of extra horsepower in those boxes.
So just I'm so sorry for another question.
Sure.
Just, if you were in my position that you needed a laptop right now, XPS or MacBook Pro?
Well, because of what I do and how much Mac OS I have in here for doing my video editing, I'd probably go with the MacBook. But I don't pound on the keyboard of my MacBook as much as other people might. It's not my primary system. My primary system is this Microsoft keyboard in front of me that I use to control my iMac Pro. So if you're worried about hardware, or you're in a particular geography of the country where getting support on an Apple product is a concern, maybe the XPS would be the better place to go. If I was choosing between the two right now, I'd go MacBook, but it's a completely different reason that you would. So don't take my particular direction. Find the one that makes sense for you.
All right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate everything you do.
Congratulations. Again, good luck with that 1002 exam.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. That's always a challenge, though, is trying to sometimes finding the right hardware is the biggest deal. I know whenever I'm in the market for buying a piece of hardware, I'm one of those people, I have to research everything. I have to look at every single option in that price point. I have to understand every single statistic. I want to be able to break down all of the different configuration settings for that. I have to look at support and know what's there. I really go through the entire detail. I get into the minutia of trying to figure out exactly what's going to be the best fit for me. I think for me, maybe that's half the fun. I really like getting into the technology, understanding what I'm getting for it. Oh, this one has an SSD. What type of SSD does it have? This one has a different display on it. How is this display better than another one? Does this one have? Do we have OLED on the XPS now? See, got OLED on the XPS. See, those are things when I start building my spreadsheet of all of the different systems and what they come with. Those things start to pull me in different directions. So I like to really understand my options and really lay it out. I'm not the kind of person who can blindly go to Best Buy and see what's there, and while I'm in Best Buy, pick it out and purchase it. I can't do that. I have to go to Best Buy to look at the settings, look at the keyboard, look at what they offer. There's no way I'm purchasing a laptop the second I go into Best Buy with no prior information at all. I'm always going to go through and figure out, what am I doing with that? Where can I go with that? How can I learn more about every possible option available? Well, okay, that's what I do. What's my opinion on an SSHD? I don't go with anything spinning these days. I don't go with any mechanical drives these days. If you're going to get a drive these days, go with an SSD. Period. The prices have dropped so much. The storage is certainly where it should be these days for an SSD. Absolutely go SSD. Go full SSD if that's what you're going to do. Yeah, they're so inexpensive these days. I agree, Zephyrin, is that they are so inexpensive compared to what they used to be. In fact, if you haven't done pricing lately, you may be surprised at how low these are getting. I have, for the studio, I just purchased, to do the 1002 series. One of the things you may have noticed is the 1001 series I recorded and posted in 1080p HD. The 1002 series is posted online in 4K. So we made a jump right there between the 1001 and the 1002. There's new cameras. There is completely new infrastructure here. This looks very similar to what it used to be, but this is a new monitor. This is a new video switching system. These are new recording systems. And I needed 4K is literally 4 times the pixels of HD. So I ended up needing 4 terabyte SSDs just to be able to store this data. So the spinning here is happening. I'm storing this to 2 gig, but I've also got in here, you can't see them, just a little lower, are 4 gig SSDs, 2 of them to store this from. And I thought, wow, I'm really going to have to spend a lot of money on a 4 terabyte SSD. Let me look at the price. Not so bad. Not as much as I was expecting. Still expensive, but not as much as I was expecting. And so that's what I record all of my videos on, are these SSDs down here. What's nice is they're so fast and they're plugged into this Thunderbolt 10 gig connection that I simply plug them into a 10 gig reader up here, Thunderbolt reader, and I'm able to edit without moving those files. I'm editing on the SSD. So it's so fast. I could never imagine going back to something else. And of course, it's an SSD that's in the system in front of me, which is an iMac Pro. It's all SSD. And ultimately, this becomes more important when, at the end of the day, I come in after dinner and load up a game. It's nice that I have that level of speed on those as well. I've gotten to a point where I've even got SSDs running on my Xbox. So you can plug in an external SSD on an Xbox and greatly decrease load times. So it's remarkable how much they improve the gaming experience by plugging into your console systems now. So I can't go back. I just can't go back to anything else but an SSD. But let's go back to the phones. Let's go to California, the 559 area code. Hello, caller. Which name are you calling from? Hello, caller. Are you there? I heard you for a moment. Maybe.
Hello?
There you are. Hi. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
I am Blake, and I'm from Michigan.
Oh, hi, Blake. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
I just wanted to say I appreciate all your content. I've been doing the A+ course. My school offers a free program, so I'm going to a community college right now to get the A+ certification.
Great.
So, yeah, I just really appreciate all the content you've been making. It's helping me a lot.
Let me ask, since this is something a lot of people are interested in doing, is and I often recommend that people go and find a place locally to take some of these classes. I, of course, never recommend to take any of these 5-day or 10-day training classes, these boot camps, they call them, complete waste of your time. But the idea of going to a community college is a great idea. Is this something that's in an entire semester and they cover both the A+ classes? What is the structure for this?
Yeah, so basically, so yeah, it's basically going by semester. I'm going to be doing this program from now until the semester ends. Now, by May, or I think I'll take the test about May or April. If I fail, I can do it again through the summer.
Okay,
So
so
it's
you have
not
some
like a
options.
10-day program. I'm being in a classroom. I'm being taught by a teacher. Just today, we've done some. We had to tear down a desktop computer and put it back together in working conditions.
Nice. I think those are the things you kind of
Yeah.
miss when you're doing this yourself, not just having all of the tools and all of the lab materials available to you, but you're now in a group of people where you can start bouncing things off of each other. What is that? What did you have here? Hey, this didn't work on this system. It did work on the other one. Why is it that way? And you can start breaking these things apart. It's an experience you can't get unless you're in a classroom with a bunch of people. You can't even do it really well virtually. You kind of have to be in a physical classroom together to really make that happen. There's of course so many limitations, even online with videos or even real time, that it's such a different experience. And you're very fortunate you're able to take advantage of that.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think that Michigan schools just have a lot of good funding because they get, at my school, they offer so many free programs. It's ridiculous. I think that I'm not sure how easily people would be able to get programs like that in other states.
I think I see a smattering of them in different places. A lot of schools in the secondary schools, the colleges, universities, still haven't quite figured out IT. And it's nice to see schools like yours that understand that IT is not programming. They're certainly part of computer science that's important. IT has a whole different range of things that you need to know about that go well beyond the ideas of programming. There's being able to manage workstations, servers, operating systems, databases, networks, security. All of those things are a huge gap that I think is completely missed by a lot of secondary education in many different states. It's so nice to see a state and an organization that is able to grasp some of that and give you something that's tangible. You can really take those skills outside of the classroom and start using them immediately. It's so valuable.
Yeah. I mean, I also really like their choice of teachers. I feel like I've been in other computer classes in the past, like game design and stuff, just for a fun thing to do. The teachers were just not really that tech savvy, but this teacher has been doing this for like 20 years, and he has like his own server set up in the class and everything, and he has all that stuff, so it's pretty good.
That's nice. It's nice to see when it's all working together the way it should be. We have a local community college here in Tallahassee where it's the same way. They're teaching the right things in the right way. It's so good to see. Blake, thank you so much for calling.
Yeah.
That's whenever I start looking at all of the different options available. I just went through this with my son who has gotten his AA degree. It's a 2-year secondary degree here in the United States, and he's looking to do something in the next 2 years to earn a 4-year degree. And we started looking at technology. He wants to do technology. So we started looking at different options. It is remarkable how many traditional universities, 4-year colleges and universities, just have no clue about IT. And it's not like IT is something brand new. We've been working with IT and having the latest technologies with servers and networks and security, well, at least the latest 20 years and a little bit farther back than that. But for some reason, they haven't caught up. They think that a technical degree is one where you're designing chips or you're learning how to do programming to build an app. And they're sort of missing the whole extremely large segment of information technology. I think it's one of the reasons that the A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus exams are so popular is because nobody's offering anything else. I'm not sure. It seems obvious to us because we're doing it. For some reason, it doesn't seem obvious to the large universities, and I'm not sure why. It's never seemed to work out for them to put some of those things together. It's not that way across the board, but for the vast majority of the ones I looked at in my particular state of Florida, which is, we got some fantastic universities in Florida that are completely missing the boat with IT. Nothing there. I think it's one of those things that you have to have somebody kind of start it off first and get things rolling. Universities tend to be a demand and supply kind of scenario. They don't quite provide the supply until they see the demand. But if they're not supplying it, they'll never see the demand. It's that catch-22 that I think they've run into, and trying to set that up. I talked to a few of them and tried to see what they were thinking for longer term and got really nothing. We ended up for my son finding a school that focused on cloud-based technologies. So we're not even dealing with servers and workstations. We jumped all the way to cloud computing and get a 2-year degree, effectively what is a 2-year degree in cloud computing. Difficult to find. This one happened to be in Florida. I could not imagine if I was outside the state where I would go. Becomes a challenge to find all of those things. So I emphasize for many people who are trying to look for this, to look as many different places as you can. You should find and just keep looking. I cannot emphasize that enough. Make sure you do the legwork. You will find something eventually, and try to find out where you should go with all of those things. The school that we found that has, and I talked to the director of the program for cloud computing, and I got a one-on-one with him and sat down and went through in detail. Tell me about what you're doing. Tell me about how you decide what to teach. And he went through the entire curriculum, and he talked about the third parties they work with, the different companies in the area that they work with to continue to evolve the curriculum. Because I was listening out for the containerization technologies, the Kubernetes, and the different things they were doing and how they taught it. How do they get students learning this? And we eventually decided on Full Sail in Orlando to do that. I was extremely impressed with what they were offering. This was a school that traditionally has been a school in dealing with visual arts. So creating movies, doing sound, really everything on the motion picture side. And they have in the last 10, 15 years focused also on the IT side as well. And their latest offering with cloud computing is very, very strong. Very, very strong. So that's what we ended up going with. If you have a look at their offering online, I'm just looking at it. I have no financial, any type of connection with them at all. There's no commercial here for them. That just happened to be what we found when we were trying to find something for my son. It was so good. I wish I could have taken his classes too. That's how good they were. I wish I could have gone through that program. It looks like a fun place to go to school too. Let's go back to the phones. Let's go to the 919 area code. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, my name is Armando Vega. I'm calling from Raleigh, North Carolina.
Hola, Armando. Thank you for calling. I haven't been up to Raleigh in a while, so thanks for your call. What can we do for you?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I enjoy your show. I learned a lot. I've been doing IT for like 5 years now, and
Nice.
I've got my CCNA and my A+. But, I have to go back to school to get it renewed and
Yep.
get my certs refreshed. So I guess my question is, if, let's say, for example, I'm trying to get into the security part of IT, what would you suggest would be a good certification to get into that portion of IT?
Well, as someone, my past experience, and prior to doing this full time, I worked for a next generation firewall company. So I got to go to a lot of different companies and talk to them about security all day, every day for many, many, many years. And the one underlying foundation with every single security person I spoke with was a very, very strong expertise in networking. And although I don't think that a lot of people realize this, it makes a lot of sense if you start to break it out. Whenever I was working with these firewalls, of course, all of this security technologies, firewalls, IPS, your SIM, your IPsec tunnels, your authentication systems, they're all connecting to the network. In many cases, you're connecting into a very complex infrastructure that has redundancy, fault tolerance. You need to implement multiple firewalls into a single link. These firewalls might be a primary and a standby, or they might be all in live at the same time. So you have always on type connectivity. So it's they have to fail from one side to the other. They have to integrate with an existing switching and routing system. You're sometimes having to do the routing on the firewall. Sometimes it's passing through to the existing routers. And then on top of that, you have all of the other technologies you have to apply to that, like IPsec tunnels, which usually decide what to send across the tunnel based on IP address ranges. So subnetting becomes so important, and being able to understand how to integrate all of these together is a huge part of it. And so whenever we would interview somebody for an SE position at our company, that's a systems engineer, where we want to see, do you know your stuff with security? One of the engineering managers in the Northeast would always ask as the very first question, tell me everything you know about ARP, the Address Resolution Protocol. So what he did is he started peeling back the onion. That was his philosophy with doing anything with an interview, is he started with a very simple topic, tell me everything you know about ARP. And then that person would tell him, and then he'd drill down on it. He'd peel more of the onion apart. Then he'd peel even more of the onion. He'd just keep peeling to learn, well, tell me about reverse ARP. Tell me about proxy ARP. Tell me about how you configure that. When did you use it? How was it used? Did it cause you any problems? How did you integrate that with your existing routers and switches? So he would go further and further and further down the line. And almost all of this turned out to be a networking conversation. And then right at the end, he'd kind of put the layer on top of security. I think it's a very good description of how security works in IT, is having this massive foundation in networking. I don't mean a little foundation. I mean, you really need to know your stuff in networking. And then on top of that, you layer the security part. I think that's the best way. And we always got the best engineers from people who had come up the ranks with their networking knowledge, a lot like yours. You've got that Cisco certification under your belt. You've become a networking expert with those technologies. Now, all you really need to do is layer the security piece right on top of it.
Excellent. Awesome. Hey, great information. Hey, keep doing what you do, man. I really appreciate it. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.
I appreciate it. Thanks for calling. That's one of the things that people say, I just want to get into security. Well, there's not a lot of security jobs out there that are entry level. There are some, so that's not a across the board type of thing. But when we talk about positions that are really paying good money for security, when I left my security job as a systems engineer, this was for one of the biggest companies in the industry, really had been able to come up the ranks, finally got that security job. You're making well into six figures at that point. It's a very lucrative position, but that money comes with the requirement that you really know what you're talking about. You can't mess around on the security side either. There's a huge security bit of knowledge you need, but perhaps an even bigger foundation of networking, and they work together so tightly that you can't dismiss either one of them. So when people are hiring for security positions, they are very commonly hiring from the networking ranks and bringing people into the security department. There are a few security jobs where people are starting to hire into security first thing. It's not quite the norm yet. I don't expect it will be, because there's just so much you need to know before jumping into security. You gotta get your teeth sharpened somewhere. So whether that's starting at the help desk, moving into workstation support, moving into server support, moving into networking, moving into security, or a similar path, there's usually a path to get there. It usually isn't one where you jump right into security. And I know there's a lot of, speaking of people that are getting these degrees in cybersecurity, whatever that is, still haven't figured out what a cyber is that we can secure, but people are getting degrees in security, and they're sending me emails and asking me questions. Where should I get my first security job? And I usually say at the help desk, or at the network team, at the NOC, maybe the SOC, maybe the Security Operations Center will become our new entry level into security. We're just not quite sure yet where that will go. But it very often is not right out of the gate. Your first job very commonly is not a security role. That's okay. That's fine. Don't worry. There are plenty of security jobs out there. You just need to work your way up to a point where you're getting one of those. Your first job is going to be awful. Your first job out of whatever you're doing is just grunt work. It always is. It's your first job. Plus, you're in a situation where you are being pummeled with information that you've never heard before. You're learning things you never knew about. You're trying to understand all of it. You're trying to read through it. You're trying to go to the meetings. You're trying to implement the technologies. You're there on the weekends. You're trying to get all of those things going. It's a lot to learn all at one time. And then what you'll start to do is focus on a particular area. So for me, I started in really delivering printer cables and installing hard drives into systems. And then it moved into workstation management and setting up people's workstations and making sure the operating system was optimized. And that moved into server administration, where I was able to manage the servers that all of those workstations connected to. And then I realized all the servers were on a big network. So I moved into network administration and learned everything I could about the network and the packets going over the network. And then the natural progression from there was to take all of that networking knowledge and move into security. So for me, that was the path. Everybody's path will be different. You'll just kind of follow the river as it takes you down. Sometimes the river takes these crazy turns. Sometimes you can kind of see where you're going. Very often, though, where you'll end up is around the corner, and you have no idea what that looks like until you get there. But trust me, if you work hard, you keep learning. And that's the one thing in this industry, whenever I've seen people stop in their professional careers, it's where they stopped learning. They stopped asking questions. They stopped trying to learn more about what was happening. There will be people throughout your career that will help you. They will train you. They will tutor you. They will mentor you. Take advantage of these people that are helping you along and bringing you along. They've got the knowledge. Learn as much as you can from them, even if you aren't quite certain where that's going to take you. And that's one of the things that I could have never predicted about where the industry is right now, even 10 years ago, because a lot of the technologies we use these days did not exist 10 years ago. So everything we know about cloud computing, everything we do with containerization, everything we do with orchestration, everything we do along all of those lines, we didn't do 10 years ago. Some of those things did not even exist 10 years ago. So don't worry where you're going to be in 5 years or 10 years. Worry about where you're going to be next. What do you want to do next? And then the rest of it will kind of fill in for you as you go along. That's the way it works. And never stop learning. Always find something interesting to learn about. And it will be remarkable how much that comes in handy. I'm so glad when I got into networking that I focused on the packets, that I tried to understand everything about layer 2, everything I could learn about layer 3, everything I could learn about layer 4, everything I could learn about how they interact with layer 7. I focused so much on those packets. Not really knowing what that would do for me, but then realizing 15 years later that knowledge was able to present me with opportunities that I would have never had if I did not have that knowledge. You never know until it happens. It's crazy the way this world works. Hopefully you're getting a feel for that as you go through your studies with A+. Keep doing what you're doing. You're on the right track, and it is remarkable the leverage and the capabilities this will give you for the future. You don't even know yet. It's a great place to be. And thank you for being here. It was great to have you here as well. Thanks for joining us on the study group. Thanks for being here in the first hour for the questions. Thanks for your questions in the chat room and your calls as well. I really appreciate all the support that you always give to us. We love to get your emails. We read through every single one of them. I don't often have time to reply to every single one of them, but I do read through them, and I do appreciate a lot. Thanks for joining us this time. We've got plenty more. Come back next week on Wednesday. We've got our Network Plus study group. And, of course, next month, we've got our A+ study groups as well. We would love to have you join us for those. Always a question, always something to learn. Never stop learning. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time on the A+ study group.